Thanks everyone for coming along. It's freezing out there, so I applaud you all for getting up and getting dressed and getting to what is going to be a really exciting day. I'm completely excited about hearing from everybody today, but also from hearing from all of you. My name is Karen. I'm the director at the Trobe Art Institute. And before I go any further with my rambling, I want to acknowledge where we are, to acknowledge that we are meeting here on wonderful Jarrah country. I have the absolute privilege of living and working on this country for the last 24 years. It's a beautiful space. The surrounding bushlands have been cared for for time uncountable, really, and we can see that that's starting to come back to life through the care of our Jarrah Corporation, who are doing some beautiful and amazing work in our surrounding landscape. So I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and really honour this country that we're meeting on today. So I'm going to start with, so that was, the nice part of my introduction. The next part is going to be the housekeeping, which is really boring. Some of you have found the bathrooms. If you haven't, they're up the stairs and to the right. If there is a fire, let's meet at the pub. So front door if you're downstairs, back door if you're upstairs, down the lane and to the pub. So we're really lucky that that's our assembly point. And everyone knows where the pub is, yes. So today we've got a really packed schedule. I'm not going to talk too much longer because we need to get straight into it. I think you all have your schedule from, yes, but I'll keep you on task today. So we'll try and keep to time. We'll have a little break between these first two sessions for bathroom and maybe a coffee. And then we'll be moving around the precinct a little bit, which is quite fun. So if you're wondering what's next, find me, find Amy, there's Amelia over there, and Jackie, who is helping people find their way in the green, there's Jackie. So find one of us if you're not sure what's happening next. And so that's a good place to introduce our amazing partners. So this program's come together with the enormous amount of work that Amy has put together over, from last year. We piloted it last year. It was an enormous success and we wanted to do it again. So the Trobe Art Institute and Emporium last year. Now we've had so much support from the City of Greater Bendigo through Bendigo Venues and Events, and we'll hear a bit from Rowan shortly. And so that really completes the partnership where we can talk really broadly about all of the spaces and opportunities available in our community here. So that's probably enough from me. I'm going to now sit down there and put a different hat on.
Hi everyone, thank you for making the effort to come out on a frosty Bendigo morning. It's lovely to have everyone here. It's lovely to see. I was just saying to Danny that I just when I think I've kind of spoken to the majority of creatives in Bendigo through my work as the co-manager and programmer at the Emporium Creative Hub, I walk into an event and there's a whole sea of faces that I haven't seen before. So I'm so excited to get to have a chat with you throughout the day. I just wanted to say a little bit about the Emporium Creative Hub. If you haven't seen us, we're down on Mitchell Street in the old Toy World building. It's a co-working space, but it's so much more than that. What it is it's funded by state government, Creative Victoria, to support the creative industries in Greater Bendigo, which is a huge remit when you start to look at what is the creative industries, but that is everyone in this room. So we do that through collaborating on events like this. We do all sorts of masterclasses, performance-based stuff. We support exhibitions. We do lots of training in all sorts of areas, and the way that we do that is to be really responsive to the people that we have conversations with. So the best way to interact is to come along to events like this, or to literally drop in, send us an email, call me, tell me what you're doing. Tell me what you're doing, where you want to go, what kind of things that are your challenges and your things, and then we know how to support you. We're always putting away, so-and-so needs to speak to that person, or you need to apply for that funding, or this opportunity is coming up, and we connect people up. That's how it works. So please, please, please get in contact if you haven't already. In this first session, we want to really talk about the different spaces that are available for visual artists through Bendigo right through to Melbourne, so that no matter where you are on your journey and your career, that you can kind of start to see where your work might fit into the landscape, where you might want to start putting some goalposts and some energy towards looking at where those opportunities lie, and having a much clearer understanding about what those opportunities look like to you, how you might best align with them, what kind of work they're looking for, so that you're not spending all this energy barking up the wrong tree. So I wanted to start, we've got an amazing panel with some really diverse spaces, but I wanted to start with the humans that are sitting here first, because I think that's really important to look at the people and who they are, and you can guarantee there's always a very creative person behind the administrative or management of a space. So when I'm not programming or managing the Emporium, I'm a performing artist. I work in sound, so I do composition and sound installations and all sorts across. If there's sound and music and story, narrative, audio narratives involved, I'm making something in that space, whether it's for a commercial or for my own pleasure or for amazing collaborations in unusual spots. So that's my absolute passion. That's where I do a lot of work. And I've got some amazing things coming up this year in Bendigo and surrounds. So hopefully you'll happen upon them without me having to spruik them too hard. But I might pass over to Danny, who is sitting next to me. Danny is a very recent head of curatorial programming at Shepparton Art Museum. But Danny, you have a rich history of programming and art management behind you. So I'm going to hand over to you to just tell us a little bit about who you are as a human, where you've come from, and how you've landed where you are right now.
How long do I have? No. Good morning, everyone. Lovely to see you all. It's so nice to sort of come home to this part of the world. I lived in Boort for my whole childhood pretty much, which is about an hour north of Bendigo. So it's really fantastic to, I think for the first time, actually give a talk in what would almost be a local area. So I grew up in regional Victoria, and like a lot of people, especially in a small country town of less than 1,000 people, 49 out of 50 people moved away to go to uni or to TAFE, either to Melbourne, to Albury, to Bendigo. And I studied graphic design initially in Melbourne, and then jumped over to art history and film. And really, I just started working. I did an internship at 200 Gertrude Street, which is Gertrude Contemporary. And it was really the first time that I'd been in that gallery environment. And I just sort of fell in love with it. I felt like I'd walked home. It was quite a strange feeling, something that was so unfamiliar that felt so familiar. And that was pretty much the start of my career about 25 years ago. And I worked like as a gallery assistant one day a week. It's like, woohoo, I've got a shift on a Saturday, you beauty. And then had to work 3 other jobs while I was studying at uni. Worked so many different jobs, seriously, like as a landscaper. Great skills, actually, just to do so many different jobs. And then that one day turned into a 3-day-a-week job at ACCA. And then that turned into a full-time job at SAM at Shepparton, actually, back in 2010. So that was really fantastic. That was when I worked at Shepparton last time. That was the first curatorial role that I'd actually I had been an independent curator leading up to that for about 10 years and curated a whole range of shows in different spaces, REs, public galleries, contemporary art spaces. So it's an interesting space. It's my first week back at SAM. And yet my mind is just like racing and about to pop. I had 8 meetings on Wednesday, which was just crazy, to be honest. But I'm so excited for the future and what is going on at SAM and in Shepparton. I'm excited to be back. I can't wait to really jump in and get started.
Amazing. We're going to delve deeper into what you're doing there at SAM, or what you're going to be doing once the haze clears. And just to note that we're going to have some great opportunities during lunch and to really corner some of these guests. And so if there's anything in their background or things that they say that you really want to dig into, we're also going to have questions after we have a little bit of conversation. So I would love to, if you've got those burning things that you want answered, please save them up. We're going to have plenty of time to do that. But I'm going to hand over to Karen to talk about, who are you, Karen?
It's a big question. I'll give you the short version. So I actually grew up in Hamilton in Western Victoria, so about 10,000 people, we say, but we think it might be less. But we're a city, and I still say we because it's still where my family is. But I moved to Bendigo to study at La Trobe, and I studied visual arts at the time, which is now creative arts. Majored in painting and continue to paint even though no one sees it. So I'm an oil painter, and I think integral to my practice is experience in landscape, and that wouldn't work in a city art school. So this has been a perfect place for me to do that. And a little bit like Danny, I was really excited to get some casual work when my children were quite young, sitting at the front desk here. And that was my sort of first work in the sort of gallery sector. Before that, I'd been really in the academic world. So, gone through my undergraduate, my PhD, and then did some tutoring and sessional teaching and dozens of sessional contracts because that's how it worked, and then landed a casual job here, and then that led to things like events management, filling in for people when they were sick, doing a bit of collection registration work, and then really uncovering a love for education and public programs in these spaces. And a university art museum is a really beautiful place to be for that reason. We're an education institution, but we have a public gallery, so it's, all of those exciting things wrapped up together. So I was assistant director here for the last 7 years maybe, and have been director for the last 6 weeks. But, the internship was 20 years, so...
G'day there, my name's Rowan. I'm Arts Officer here with the City of Greater Bendigo. Born just down the road in Maryborough, came across to Bendigo maybe when I was 10, I can never remember, and got an interest in music, playing trumpet, ended up getting to play trumpet with the Bendigo Symphony Orchestra, and early on played a Beethoven symphony, and without going into the whole history of trumpet music. The instrument Beethoven was writing for was pretty rudimentary, very limited. And so my part was ba 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 ba, and this fantastic music sounded. And I thought, well, this composition stuff must be pretty easy because you don't have to put many notes down and it sounds awesome. So I really got into composition through ignorance, and I guess it's the ignorance is sort of not being told, and I was really fortunate to be in an environment and no one said, no, that's not how composition works. You need to go and study this, and then you can start putting dots on paper. I didn't have that sensible person in my life. I was also really fortunate that my mother's cousin, Helen Gifford, it's probably not a well-known name, but she's actually a really fine composer. And I was writing these shitty little piano pieces, and Mum's, I sent that off to cousin Helen, and I had no idea who cousin Helen was. And from about 14, 15, just had this beautiful, gentle mentoring relationship where Helen would just give some nice comments, send a cassette. So that's how old I am. We used to post cassettes around. She'd send a cassette of Stravinsky or Bartok. Why don't you just listen to this? Why don't you listen to this? And I'm in retrospect, I think that mentoring relationship at a very young age, but at whatever age, was just so valuable for me. And I'd encourage people to find a mentor or be a mentor. It's a beautiful experience, and something, obviously, 40 so years later, I still reflect on. So I went off and studied composition at Canberra School of Music, ANU. So I've got an ANU degree, which when I enrolled, I was going to get a School of Music degree, so that was nice. After about 9 years at La Trobe in the library, a position came up with the City of Greater Bendigo as arts officer, and I've been in that role for the past 16 years and really loving it, really loving the diversity of the role, whether it is working with professional, with emerging artists. Right down last week, time flies, we had our Youth Arts Prize, which is a great opportunity. We've got like 7-year-old kids entering it. It goes up to 25. Arts and health projects, I guess, really motivated by creating opportunities for people to share their work, build community, and just sort of underlying it all, the fact is that art's really good and it's important, and more people engaging with art makes for a better society. So,
Absolutely. Wonderful. And we might hear from Jane Singer.
Hi, I'm Dane. I'm an art dealer. I have a commercial gallery I have had for about 12 years. My path there, I did a BA in art history and history at Melbourne and a grad dip in arts management and a Master of Art curatorship. Throughout my studies, I worked a number of different jobs. I was an auction assistant at Sotheby's, an art auction house, a gallery assistant at Libby Edwards Galleries in Portsea and in South Yarra, which was big drives every weekend. I worked in architecture doing PR and marketing assistant type work. And then around the time I started my master's, I was also working full-time as a curator at the Museum of Chinese Australian History. So throughout my studies and all of that work, what I wanted to be doing was curating. It's very hard to get a start in that industry, but I did start eventually through doing like a lot of independent small projects off my own bat or that sort of involvement. Like I also joined the board of Blindside, which is an artist-run space. Started to get more of those sort of gigs. After I'd finished my studies, I went to work for Anna Schwartz as her gallery manager and stayed on the board at Blindside, so I was doing a bit of independent stuff as well. So I was sort of on that curatorial type path, I feel. But then when I was 26, I had my first child and had assumed that my career path would continue, but it's sometimes a little different to how you think. She was 2 months premature and like care of her was very, very intense. So I ended up stopping work. I didn't return to my job at Anna's. Was not compatible with having a really high needs baby. But what I did start doing when I was on this sort of maternity leave period was a lot more project work. Around the time she was about 1, I started to sort of get a bit more brain power back. I worked for a new media art organisation called Experimenta as their associate curator on one of their new media biennials. A few small curatorial projects, I curated a big show as an external curator with a coordinating curator at the NGV, which was sort of what I thought I would always have wanted to be doing. And then, like, I'd sort of come from this self-starting, DIY and commercial gallery background where you do everything, you do it quickly, you do it efficiently, and found big institutional work very different to what my dream had been of it. Not that, like, it was a really incredibly positive experience, but I started to realise that maybe that wasn't actually the best fit for me. I was still sort of thinking about returning to that career path, but then I got sort of offered my first institutional, curatorial, full-time contemporary art role, and had to sort of think about what that actually meant for my life and me and my 3-year-old, and decided that actually it was not right for me. And instead I took the really big, risky step of opening my own space. Probably a bit of hubris in that I thought, I've worked in all these different spaces, I know how to do it all, I want to run my own show. I'd loved sort of not answering to anyone in doing project work. I'd worked for quite a lot of big personalities and like tricky workplaces. So I was quite excited about just doing it myself. So I opened just before my daughter turned 4 on the smell of an oily rag. Sort of spent first couple of years were pretty grim and tough and probably more akin to like artist run initiative type work in terms of how you work and the budgets that you work with. But gradually grew it over the last 12 years. So when I started out, I was much more interested in just making good exhibitions, and it took me more time to grow my interest and love of business and small business. I also did just before I opened, I sort of thought, there are a few things I don't know. And I did some night classes at Kangabatman TAFE in small business as well, which was much more practical than all of the art history and so on that I'd done at uni. So yeah, that's my path to where I am now, 12 years in.
It's fantastic, and I think it's really important to hear the humans, which is why I wanted to start with that. So there's often this perception that there's these kind of faceless. When you're an individual artist, it's just like, I don't know who's behind the wall of that institution or that organisation. I wouldn't know how to get there. They're not going to know me unless they happen upon my Instagram and magically, elevate me into some programming or something like that. And it can be really difficult. And we're all humans. We've all had these very human paths to get to the particular jobs and places that we occupy now. And everyone's really approachable, and nothing happens without collaboration and communication. So I think hearing everyone's paths is really fantastic, so that you can know that, oh, hang on, I've got, that's very similar to me, or, there's a way, and you can just walk up to someone and speak to them on an even footing. That's what I'd really like to get. Like, people are just people, and that you can go into some institute and, like you say, tricky workplaces. Depending on the project, they can be interesting, and you can get those egos and that kind of thing. But that's not how I operate, and that's not how I collaborate. And I see it everywhere, that the most amazing, profoundly creative and fulfilling projects and work come from having conversations. So I would just invite everyone to just start there. But I really want to jump into space. We might stay with you, Dane, if we could, for a bit, to talk about your spaces. So I'd love to hear from everyone, and just, what is your space? What kind of work happens there?
Did you want me to talk just like about how commercial galleries are structured.
Yeah,
I think
that would
sometimes
be wonderful, yeah.
they're quite oblique for people. So commercial galleries, sometimes there's a lot of crossover between all of our spaces and what we'll all be showing, but we really sort of differ in our legal, financial structures of the business. I would say that we are the space that takes the role of working most directly and in a long-term, ongoing role with the artist as their representative in the world. So we're sort of the most direct transmission of the artist and their studio to the public world. Often we're the first place their work will be seen before it heads to clients, commercial gallery, other spaces, public spaces, and so on. So in terms of how we're set up, our legal financial structure, we're a PTY Ltd company. Most commercial galleries are. So we're a privately owned business like retail, hospo, other small businesses you know. We're not publicly owned. We've got no committee. We've got no board. We don't answer to the public. We don't answer to anyone except ourselves and our artists, basically, and our collectors as well. Where that sort of structure allows you to be run for profit, unlike not-for-profits, but it doesn't necessarily mean that commercial galleries are all just about profit. I know a lot of incredible spaces that I'm sure are run at a loss, that are run because they're interested and care about the work that they're showing. And likewise, I know a lot of not-for-profits that make a very big profit and have high-paid staff and much more commercial exhibitions than you might necessarily find in commercial spaces. Our financial structure is different. Commercial galleries don't generally get any public funding. There's no council money, there's no federal or state funding. Occasionally they might get like project grants for particular things, but it's unusual and it's definitely not the main source of funds. Commercial galleries, our funding comes from usually the owner's capital, what we put in to start up or to keep it afloat if it's not a profitable business. And then the main way we're funded is through gallery commission. So that's the cut that commercial galleries take on everything that they sell. In Australia, that's usually around 50% commission. Varies between about 40 and 50, but most are around 50. Like back in the day, a few decades back, it was lower, it was sort of 30, and then it was 40, and gradually crept up to 50. Australia has sort of taken longer to get there than international galleries that were at 50 a long time beforehand. And the main reason for that change is operating costs have changed, and real estate being the main one. Does anyone feel shocked by that 50% mark? Yeah. So just as, so you know, like that is the only money that comes in. So when they don't sell anything, there is no money. And there are many shows that don't sell anything. So, you know, a lot of them are actually, those commercial galleries are really sort of subsidising artists a lot more than other spaces. So to justify that figure of the commission and what we do to get that, we do a lot of things. We're wearing a lot of hats for our artists and different things depending on what each of the artists we represent wants and needs. So the basic thing that commercial galleries are doing for their artists is giving them solo shows. You know, usually every 1 or 2 years they have a solo show with their commercial gallery. They're also supported through promotion, sales, mentorship, guidance, prize applications, help with grant applications. Galleries take the role of registration and documentation for everything that an artist makes, for photographing it, making sure there's a record of everything and where it is, both while it's in the studio and out in the world. They might be taking their artists to art fairs, providing a space to store their work and to exhibit their work. So that's a main part of our overheads, is having a big, beautiful space. They're also providing staffing for those shows. So yeah, that's sort of what we do for the artists and how we're financially structured. Yeah.
That's amazing. Can you let us know a little bit about your space? Like, what is it? Where is it? And what does it look like?
So I'm in Brunswick. This is the third physical space that I've had. When I opened, we were in Flinders Lane in the city in a basement space. The space was a bit scrappy, but also quite cool and interesting. We were there for 7 years. And then when my lease came up, I was like, I actually cannot do another winter in a basement. And we moved to a space in Fitzroy, which was sort of warehouse conversion, did a fit out there, and were there for 4 years. Then 2 years ago, I took a really big step of buying the space, which was financially a lot of money, but also a really good move for stability and so on. And like, honestly, the mortgage on it was less than commercial rents in Melbourne. So the space I'm in now is warehouse conversion, much bigger space, sort of white cube style of very big white walls, very bright lighting.
Amazing. Well done. Finding a real estate. We're just having a chat with Pat.
Yeah, actually getting the first commercial lease was really challenging, actually. Like, if any of you have small businesses or art spaces or anything, actually getting a lease when you don't have a history of running a business, pretty tough.
Yeah.
Negotiating commercial leases, don't want to do that again.
No, absolutely. Rowan, can we hear a bit about the different, there's a few spaces under the banner?
Yeah, so...
City?
As I said, I'm with the City Greater Bendigo, and we've got a number of spaces that we manage or support through partnership, and I'll try and fire through them pretty quickly. The first two I'm going to speak about come under the banner of Exhibit B. These are two similar spaces, both that we operate in partnership with Bendigo Bank. It's actually they own the space, but they're willing to let us put art in there. I guess probably right from the get-go, that places a challenge on the space in that they're both public spaces. One's an old sort of display window in Fountain Court, Exhibit B Central. The other one is up in Mitchell Street in the bank up there. They've got 3 frames, I call them, within the shop, the bank, where you can display work. Really try and make those as accessible as possible. There's not really a formal application. There's no EOI or applications close, whatever. Generally, we find people come to us and say, oh, I'm looking for an exhibition space, and oh, well, we've got one in 6 months. At the moment, we're booked through to the start of 2025. So that's only 6 months away. I wonder if, I was thinking about this before, and I think 2025 sort of sounds like a science fiction date. So I think people are reluctant to book anything in 2025. But generally it's a discussion. I've got this work, and it could be an individual artist, it could be group shows, it could be collaborations. Every now and then we'll put something together. For example, in a few weeks' time, Janet, we'll have a show coinciding with NAIDOC Week. So sometimes we set aside dates for that. Getting back to the relationship with the bank, probably one of the challenges with the space, and it's never really been an issue, is that because they're public spaces, they are owned by, 2 big corporations, the city and the bank. We just need to make sure that no one's going to be offended or whatever by the work showing. So there's that little sort of censorship thing happening with the space, whereas when you walk into a gallery, you've made a decision to go to the gallery, you sort of half expect to be a little bit shocked. Whereas if you're walking from the cafe to the bookstore, you don't want to have to explain horrible things to your children at sort of 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. As I say, but look, that's rarely been an issue. There's one show that's coming up and it's going to look at some challenging issues. And I'm not saying we don't want to put, art should be about exploring challenging issues, but in these sorts of space, it's about how do we navigate it, how do we make sure that we don't have a confected outrage and something like that. We'll get there. Over the road, we have Dudley House. This is a great space. We're going to be visiting there later on today to see Ivan's show. This space is managed by the city and confer a community rate, which pretty much applies to any local artist. It's around $135 a day. That will change with the new financial year. It might go up to 140 or something like that. So that's if you're thinking, I've got work that can sell. So we've got a few shows each year where individuals or collectives will hire the space and sort of do that equation to think, well, if we spend $1,000 on the space and sell work, we'll end up ahead. That's great. And we encourage that and support that where we can. We also have a subsidy program for Dudley House. So 6 times a year, we provide the space for 2 weeks, tech support to help you hang your show, and there's also $1,000 that goes with that subsidy. And look, $1,000 isn't a lot, but it could mean getting collateral printed, it could mean getting works framed, it could mean a bit of catering for the opening. They are a competitive process. We have that twice a year now. And it's getting more competitive, which is sort of great because it means that the work that we're showing is really good work. But it does mean, probably when I started the role, you had a pretty good chance of getting the application through. Now, it's the not so good part of the role is that we're knocking back some good applications, which is not to say don't apply, but that's the way it is. We also at Dudley House support, again, throughout the year, a few other exhibitions. For example, we've got Nolderong, which is, again, NAIDOC Week exhibition that Janet curates. That's coming up in a few weeks' time. We've also got in September CoLab, which is a long-running collaboration exhibition that Tony Day's running. We're looking forward to that. We've also got at the Capitol Theatre, the foyer space there. We have about 6 or 7 exhibitions a year. Some of them are ones we curate directly. So right now, there's an exhibition of work from the Raw Arts Awards that we've put together. But we've also got a program now because we used to have people every now and then, how can I get in the foyer space? We do have a program for having your work in the foyer space. So again, it's an EOI process. And there is a little bit of cash to support you. The challenge with that space is, again, it's a public space. It's probably not a really good focus. It's not like walking into a gallery where you can really curate it and the people who are coming to my space are coming to look at my work and they want to delve into it. We've got people coming for shows, cushion concerts for preschoolers, matinees for seniors, we've got conferences, we've got breakfast. So it's quite a diverse crowd. But it's a great space. It does mean you get a lot of people through. If you want more information about that space, catch me later. Over the road, we've now got the carriageway. That's we've got a couple of projectors there. So that one is a bit ad hoc. We're not sort of commissioning work or putting out EOIs, but it is there. And if you had work that you were creating that you think would fit, let us know. We've got Pennyweight Walk, which is an open air gallery space. That one we probably every 2 years we have a new exhibition because of the way the space is managed physically. It costs about $10,000 to create and install the work. Generally it's printed onto panels, and those panels have to be installed and secured. So we rotate work there about roughly 1 to 2 years.
That's another one where it pays to have conversations with the team there as well. For example, Megan Champion, I'm not sure if you're aware of Megan's work. She created the Women of Gold exhibition, so it took over the Bendigo letters, but also artwork with people who are here today, amazing female artists. Across there for women's, the International Women's Day, and covering through there. So that was something that was not commissioned. It was artist led. So she actually went out and had conversations and said, "I really want to make this happen. How do we make this happen?" And went out and had those conversations and instigated the whole process. And she managed to get some highly visible, iconic places in Bendigo to do that. So that was very much artist instigated. So it really does pay to have conversations. I'm going to say that a lot today. Speak up.
I think that's a great example of someone with a really strong vision, a great passion, and taking the time to build the relationships. And it's also lovely artwork. If you haven't been down there, go and look at the work. It's a great outcome. The only other thing I'd say, we've got like temporary public art projects. So this afternoon, when you go to Dudley House, keep going, go out to the back where Chris Duffy is installing a paste-up work on the back of the old fire station. We've had installations out at Kennington Reservoir. They tend to be projects we've initiated through an EOI process. So there's a range of spaces. I think, keep an eye out for those EOIs and those opportunities, but have the conversations. I think that's really key.
Karen, would you like to let us know from, the university/gallery space, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's important to sort of understand the governance structure and that we are funded by a university. So we are Trobe University, and that means that we're also vulnerable to fluctuations in that sector. So
turn the microphone on.
is it not on?
Up.
Up?
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah. But it does mean that the exhibitions and commissions that we present, they're curated. We approach artists, but we pay fees to the artists for those opportunities. So here is in Bendigo is our contemporary gallery space. It's a multifunctional space, as you can see. So we have our galleries. We also have space on the front of the building that's designed for artwork to reach the public. We have an apartment for residencies, and we have studio spaces, meeting spaces. So our curated program here is, so we have two curators, Amelia and Jackie, who you'll meet. They'll meet with artists, they'll do studio visits, they'll visit exhibitions, they'll do their research, they're attuned to what's happening in contemporary practice locally, nationally and internationally. Our exhibitions, we have 4 a year in these spaces. And the exhibitions will be, they've largely been group exhibitions, but we're not necessarily tied to that. But group exhibitions are a way for us to bring together artists from across those different, geographies, but also different perspectives and voices looking at contemporary issues, things that often align with research interests at La Trobe, things that align with disciplinary interests, so teaching, and that provides opportunities for us to expose the La Trobe community inside La Trobe, but also the communities that we live and work in, to contemporary art, and to see contemporary art as a vehicle for understanding the world we're in. So that's one way that we do that. We'll also commission work, so approach artists directly and pay a fee in production to produce new works for the front of our building. So there's 2 commissions every year. And so you can have a look at the front. We've got Nick and Jeremy's installation there, dressing, so that's curated by Jackie. And we work alongside the artists for those commissions to understand this community, this geography, and often they're artists bringing ideas or perspectives that are perhaps outside of our community and understanding it here in this context. So our role for local artists is, by understanding what you're doing and getting a sense of your practice and seeing where you might fit within those curatorial discussions, but also in providing access to the best contemporary art that's going around here in your own community. So not having to travel all of the time, but actually seeing these exemplary exhibitions here. That's one part of what we do, but also having conversations like this, professional development, hopefully shining a light on all those invisible parts of the arts ecosystem and telling you how it works. And also providing a gateway into La Trobe's research and what La Trobe does, but doing that through art because that's often more interesting than research papers. And then also we have a studio that's available, so we'll later today I'll share some information on that, which is a studio available for short-term kind of occupation for people who are in commuting distance. So we support 1 alumni artist every year. And we'll hear from Jan, who will be here a bit later. She undertook that residency. And we also have residencies where people are coming from further afield or internationally, and they can share their experiences and their practice with our community here. So that's some of the things that we do.
That's great. We might hear what's happening at Shepparton.
Thank you. What is happening in Shepparton? It's a very good question. It's my first week this week, so I've...
What would you like?
I've been in the building for 4 days. But interesting talking about space. I think I've seen nearly all the spaces now in the building, and I hope some of you have been over to the new SAM, which has been standing by the lake in Shepparton for the last just over 2 years. It's a fantastic state-of-the-art new art museum, really, I guess hopefully the pride of the town. But it's really interesting having worked there a decade ago to what the gallery used to be. So I have this sort of mindset of old Sam and new Sam a little bit. And it's interesting in that context because old Sam was, while it's always been the largest sort of public gallery in that northeast part of the state, traditionally it was council funded, and I guess the biggest change that happened over the last decade was that a SAM Foundation was formed, and SAM is now company limited. So while we receive annual funding from the local council, the management structure is separate, and I think that's probably a lot of large public galleries are going in that direction, and there's a number of reasons why, but I think one of the largest reasons is because it opens up the opportunities for other funding streams. And in a really tight funding environment, how else do you build a $50 million new art museum? You can't rely on the local council. They're just not going to put that much money in. So you have to, I think through that diversification of revenue and income and funding, there was a need for the art museum to change structure. So we have a board in place. It's an amazing building. Like, it's been so cool just to sort of walk around all of the spaces, and when we talk about spaces, there are spaces everywhere across the 4 levels. There are spaces to really show off the collection. So there's over 4,000 artworks in the collection at SAM with a ceramic focus. So that's the big focus in the collection. And later this year, pretty much the whole building will be full of the collection for, I think, the first time. So that's really exciting that there's an opportunity to get that collection out. Sam also is the collection's turning 90 in a few years' time. So this collection has been built up over quite a long period of time. It doesn't have the huge weight of history as, say, the Bendigo Art Gallery or Ballarat or the NGV. So it's interesting that it feels a bit lighter and a bit more nimble in a way. And now having a building to match it that's full of potential and full of ambition. The spaces are quite amazing. There's very small public spaces in some of the public stairwells and display cabinets where you can display 4 or 5 collection works. And then there's the 2 massive galleries, which I was trying to work out how long it was, and it's probably about further than I can kick a footy. So it's got to be about 65 metres long, these gallery spaces. They are huge. And one of the exhibitions on at the moment is the amazing Ryan McGinley show. He's like an Australian exclusive to have an American artist having his first exhibition in Australia as part of Photo 2024. And that is an amazing show. There's more nudity than I've ever seen in my life in an exhibition. And you think, whoa, how's that going down in a place like Shepparton? But it's been really well curated, really clear communication. There's only been one complaint for the whole exhibition, which is pretty amazing for like over 700 images of naked people. But I think it really speaks to, Sam, our appetite for presenting the best in contemporary practice, not just ceramic practice, but every medium, and really offering, like you were saying, the local audiences an opportunity to see some of the best art in the world, really. What an amazing experience for our residents in Shepparton and further afield. It's not that far to get over from Bendigo. It's an hour and a bit, I think. But I guess some of the other spaces within SAM, there's always been a big focus on trying to support local artists as well and local creatives. So we run programs called SAM Open, which I think the application's closed on Monday, which is for artists over 26 years of age in the Goulburn Valley to apply to be part of a larger group show at SAM. And we've just come off SAM Fresh, which is an exhibition which is for under 26-year-olds. It sort of came out of sort of that VCE Top Arts model, showcasing Goulburn Valley students in VCE, and that was expanded just to include people that are a bit older than that as well. There's so many meeting spaces. There's a residency program. The collection spaces are really fantastic. It's so old SAM. I think I'm allowed to say this. In the old SAM, the actual collection was stored in the basement, 100 metres away from the Goulburn River, basically in a flood zone. Like, just crazy, absolutely crazy. When I worked up there in 2010, we had to move works upstairs because of the flood levels. The new SAM, all of the collection is stored much higher than that. And some people may have seen those photos from a couple of years ago with the big flood. The water actually came to the doorstep but didn't get in the building. So it's been designed very sensibly. It's an amazing space. It's amazing just the transformation, I think, of that gallery, the amount of people coming in, the amount of local people coming in and engaging as well, and a lot of tourists that are passing through Shepparton. We really aim to be one of the leading regional public art galleries in the country. We have a whole range of exhibitions. We curate exhibitions. We have collection exhibitions. We have touring shows. There's so much potential, and I think that's a large part in why I was drawn back to SAM. We were talking about this idea back in 2010 to 12 of this amazing museum, what it would be like. We changed the name to Sam back then from SAG. We didn't like the sagginess. So Shepherd and Art Gallery, we decided to make this change, which was all about, I guess, thinking about what the future could hold. So it's amazing to see this amazing building and what it's doing. But also,
Fabulous.
it's been, like I was saying, it's been up for 2 years now, and I really feel it's taken probably that time to get to know the building and work out how it operates. So I think in the next 12 to 18 months in particular, it's a really great, you'll notice a lot of changes because it's really about to hit its stride.
Amazing. There's 4 very different spaces and that we're talking about, and organisational structures and considerations from commercial through to local to international. There's a lot of competing kind of things in the programming, and so I'm wondering, before we go to questions, with local Bendigo artists, how might they, what opportunity, we've touched on it a little bit, but what opportunities in terms of the people in this room, the artists in Bendigo and surrounds, approaching each of your organisations with work, what opportunities are there specifically, and how do you want them to approach you? What are the means, and what are their considerations for the artist in terms of money? Like, how is it commissioned? What are they contributing that money to it? What's the risk? That kind of thing. So, kind of, what's the landscape look like there? Who wants to tackle that one first?
Well, do I start? Because I feel like we're the entry level. So with spaces like Exhibit B, it's the space. That's what we provide. So it's up to the artist to obviously create the work, frame it, even install it. I guess one of the, in some ways, the good things about Exhibit B is it's hard to do a launch, so there's no expectation that you can do a launch. And it can be a really good, I've seen some really great examples where people are perhaps putting their foot into the water of exhibiting, and we're just, and because it's a little bit anonymous, you can put the work up, you can sit in the corner and just watch people go by, or you can go up and stalk them and ask them, what do you think of my work? But it's, not much support from us, and I think just to get the work out there. Then I guess you've got the next step up is probably Dudley House, which, as I say, there is a subsidy program, it's a application form, it's a process twice a year, with a little bit of money provided, and that tech support, and also support with marketing, and including media. And then you've got the EOIs, which are the larger programs. So I guess, how do we get involved? I think I'll mention later, we've got our Artsy Bulletin. Keep in touch with, we've got an Artsy Bulletin, we've got a Facebook page, which I know is old people, but we're trying to get an Insta page. Keep in touch. But again, I think, talk to us. And especially when we're talking about what gets an exhibition over the line for a Dudley House, it's that passion. I think in my time here, you sort of had when I started working with local government, it was sort of like everyone took their turn. So you had the such and such club would have an exhibition every year, and they'd come up and say, oh, well, it's nearly September, it's time for our exhibition. And goes, well, yes, you've waited. And whereas now there's just a lot of interesting and diverse work happening, and it's really about that passion, and there's got to be a drive and a desire. Obviously good work behind it, but come and talk to us. And talk to us early. I think there's a feeling when you're approaching government, even if it's local government, that you've got to have everything sort of signed, sealed and delivered, and I'm not going to talk to you unless you've got the sort of 80-page prospectus all beautifully typed up and bound. Talk to us if you've got half an idea or even less than half an idea. Or one of the things I like about the spaces that we're managing is that, and there's been some great shows which have just been, like Sarah had one recently, which was sort of just a one-off collaboration. You didn't have to form the committee. You might have formed the committee. I'm not sure how you work. but yeah, sometimes you could just, you know what, with 4 of us, we get together, 5 of us, and say, do you know what, I think our work resonates. Let's have an exhibition. And we have the exhibition, and that could be enough. And we could then go our separate ways. So I think harness that energy, harness the passion, and come and talk to us. And yeah, I can't guarantee stuff, but it's exciting. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning, is meeting people with a passion, with a project, and hopefully we're able to get it to the next stage.
Amazing. We might go to Dane, because that's a few steps up the road from that emerging and really just finding your feet in, what you're making to where you're working, Dane.
Yeah, sure.
How might
So
an artist engage with you?
it's pretty hard to get your foot in the door at commercial galleries. That's not because we're bad people and disinterested. It's because most of us, because we have those ongoing relationships of representation, you can't take on everyone. I represent about 15 artists. If I took on everyone that ever approached me, I would not be representing anyone properly. So mostly we're doing shows of those people that are represented. We do some project shows by unrepresented artists and curated exhibitions as well. Not many artists get representation by hitting up a gallery that does not know their work already or them already. So I think really what you need to think about is the step before that, of getting your work known by dealers. Things I recommend are going to shows in the spaces you like all the time. I recognise the faces of artists that drop into every show and say hi and, maybe say something about the work. You do that enough, people start to get to know you, so that when you do reach out to someone, you're not a stranger. I think it's probably better to take an approach of, with curators and dealers, of letting them know about your work rather than necessarily making a demand of them. So if I get an email from someone I've never met that says, "Hi Jane, I like your space and I want to show in it and be represented by you. Can you do a studio visit?" I want to run away and hide next time I see them, because they've sort of put me on the spot. So I think take the approach of making it all right for someone to say no to you whilst not being awkward next time you meet them. So the types of approaches that I think are good are when, say maybe every year or two, an artist might send the curators and dealers that they like an email that's, "Hi Dane, just wanted to let you know about the project I've got on in this space. If you don't get a chance to visit, here's a PDF of the works. Thanks." That's great. I can look at the work. I know they're interested, but they haven't made any demands of me. But I have an awareness of their practice. You probably won't get any responses back from most of those sorts of things, but you have to do a lot of that just to get known to the industry. Is that helpful? Yeah.
That is really helpful. Yeah, especially knowing that when you aren't getting the feedback, that it's still worthwhile, that people are still taking it in and they are looking at your stuff.
Also, I should say, I know it's really hard because I do that for artists. That's like the job that galleries do. Is I am pitching other people, I'm pitching collectors or curators about their work for them. And you don't always get a response. And it's, people are busy. They might get a lot of emails from artists. If you don't have a relationship with them, there's not a lot of incentive for them to reply.
That's a lovely segue, because we get those beautiful emails from Dane and from other gallerists as well that make us aware of, what shows they've got coming up, what their artists are doing. Is this on this time? Yeah, cool. Just thought I better check. And so there is that way of us being introduced to different artists and new works produced by artists we're already aware of that are represented. But of course, in our spaces, we're interested in artists who are also not represented, artists who are making work in our context. So we would like to know what people are doing. But again, a similar approach, not a demand or a resolved exhibition proposal for a space like this, because we have curators who are doing that exhibition making. But we are always interested in knowing who's out there, who's doing what, invitations to shows at, Dudley House across the road. That's ways for us to be aware of what people are doing. And also that thing about being known in the space, we do get approaches at the front desk from people who would like an exhibition. And I've observed it over the years. A lovely conversation, but often people then don't even enter the gallery space. And so if there isn't a kind of demonstration of interest in who is showing here now and the types of works we present, then it's hard for us to understand why you feel you fit that context. Getting familiar with the type of work that's exhibited in a space and the types of exhibitions and even the types of exhibitions our curators curate. It might be connections also with other things that are going on in the university community that might be of interest. So making yourself known is important, but the way you make yourself known is just as important. I think... Yeah. Also, one thing, because we are a multifunctional space, we're also interested in non-exhibition ideas. And I think this is a really important way for us to get a sense of your interest areas. So if you would love to run a workshop, if you would love to screen something you've been working on, if you would like to present work by someone else or curate a little film festival or all those sorts of things, we cannot guarantee we can pick it up, because we also have a standard in which we will pay certain fees for artists who are exhibiting. So if you say, I want to put on a film festival here but I'm not paying anyone fees, that's something that we probably won't do, because we want to make sure our artists are paid, so everyone who is exhibiting here is paid. If you want to run a workshop, we would want to have a conversation with you around what that would look like to make sure that the people who are facilitating are paid appropriately. So, but those sorts of conversations around public programs, around use of our meeting spaces, our auditorium, conversations in the gallery, you want to meet here with a group of artists, they're really great ways for us to get to know you and your interest areas.
Amazing. I think looking at those opportunities outside of the norm too, and having conversations about that, and like you said, Rowan, like half an idea, you might have the piece that we have the other half of that piece and just go, actually, that will just, and it might not happen straight away, but it's like, oh, I had that conversation with that person, and the number of times, like months later, you'll get an email from me going, how we spoke about that random idea you had? Well, I've been thinking about it, and do you reckon we could pull this together? That happens a lot, way more than you realise probably. Like it's a lot. Well, certainly with mine, it's a lot of my programming is just getting that little idea and energy from someone else, and then it sits here and wakes me up at 3 a.m. I go, I've got to make this happen now. So plant seeds and see what grows. Danny, and then we'll throw to some questions.
Yeah, I think from my sort of curatorial perspective as well, like I learned how to curate in a way by hanging out in artist studios. Like that's my safe place as well. Just going to artist studios, getting out of the office, seeing what people are making, understanding practices. And I don't think distance has necessarily stopped that as well. Like, I'm just thinking of previously, I was working down at Mornington at MPRG, and we've just delivered a massive public sculpture by Cameron Robbins, who lives in Castlemaine. So, it's an amazing sort of kinetic sculpture. But that relationship has been formed over the last 10 years of working with Cam. It's just great to see what people are making and working on. In terms of opportunities for artists in this region over in Shepparton, like our program is largely curated, but I think just to have that awareness of what people are working on, like it's not that far to come and have a studio visit or just to give some feedback. Sometimes you can be working in isolation and you just need someone to say, oh, that looks good or that doesn't, or I don't understand that. Sometimes that can be really important, and I think a large part of my curatorial practice over the last couple of decades has been about supporting artists and giving them advice and assistance. So yeah, I've got a very open door policy. Always feel free just to get in touch, drop me an email. I have some very regular artists that seem to follow me wherever I'm working, and from all over the country, actually.
Very polite.
Yeah, no, and I love it. I love it, and I always respond and I always engage, and it's amazing. Like you just never know when there might be that sort of time where things come together. You can speak to people for 10 years, and then it's like, oh, remember that work? Maybe I'll put them into a show. So it's really about having that awareness of what people are working on, and we're all pretty friendly, I imagine. Just come and say hi and have a chat to us, really. It can seem a bit daunting as well, but yeah, I think you've just got to be open to that.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to run around with this microphone to ask some questions. Has anyone got any questions of the panel? That you'd like? Yeah.
If I'm allowed to start, I've got a question for Dane, and thank you so much, because I haven't really heard such a transparent description of how commercial galleries operate, and it was a really generous way to talk us through your business model. My question is around how do you balance artists with a kind of commercial impulse? How do you balance their work to make sales, and how do you find a balance with their more experimental practices?
Different for every gallery. In mine, I've sort of learnt to pace the program a bit. My accountant says, please not this artist in February when you haven't done any business over January holidays, that sort of thing. I find that, look, just overall it all balances out. Most galleries will tend to have a couple of artists who are generating most of the income and kind of subsidising the other people in the program. So each commercial gallery just makes their own decision about what artists they're prepared to show that are not commercial. It's really not my first consideration when I'm taking on an artist. I'm more looking at will there be an interest in their work? And that could be commercial, but it might be curatorial, or it might be audience, or it might be industry respect. So it's different for every artist. Like the artists in my program, when I take them on, one of the main considerations for me is that they don't replicate other people's practice within my gallery. So I'm not a gallery that just shows photography or this type of practice or that type of practice. I want them each to be quite individual in their practices, so there's not doubling up. Again, each artist has different priorities. For some of my artists, sales really are a priority, and they want to have much more active conversations with me about balancing sizes of work at different price points in a way that will mean that they make the most out of a show, or that it's a safe proposition, and that, you know, they're making work that they're not spending too much on for what they will get back. Other artists will bring me shows, and we both know that there will not be any commercial considerations out of it whatsoever. So yeah, sorry, different for every artist. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Sarah. I'm a visual artist, and I'm wanting to talk about or ask questions of all of you just quickly about the future of online presence. Online galleries, are you seeing that it's having effect? With artists, do they need to have a following? For example, in publishing, they like you to have at least 10,000 to 40,000 people. Do you have that expectation? And where do you see yourself in the internet world in the future?
I'll take that. I don't care how many Instagram followers you have, but I do expect that if I'm researching an artist, I can find information about them online, whether that's on your Instagram or a website. There must be information about you out there, because that's for curators as well. Like, that's the first way they're going to start looking at your work. They're not going to have seen one painting ever, find nothing online, and then seek out your studio. They want to do a bit of research. Online's incredibly important. Most of my sales happen via email. Documentation of your work is incredibly important. Most people that see your work, regardless of where you show, will be seeing it in reproduction. It's gallery attendances are pretty shocking. You'd be horrified how few people physically come to shows. The main people that come to shows are artists. They're not necessarily collectors. Often collectors will see the work for the first time when they pick it up or it gets delivered. You've got to work with that. People, I would say maybe sometimes I see artists going a little too heavy-handed in trying to craft online professional personas and so on. I don't think you have to go so far that you're trying to act like your own commercial gallery. Some of those, people want to still, they know you're an artist, they know you're a normal person. Just make sure there's images of your work and information about it somewhere out there.
Yeah, I agree. And current, keeping things fresh and just showing us where you're at now is really important as well, rather than kind of going back and seeing there's great work, but it's from 1995. Because that does happen. And I also think not worrying too much, obviously the beautiful documentation of the finished pieces, having great photographs, that is really important. But for me, I love to see the process and the person behind it as well. And I think that's where socials is really great. I think if you're spending all your time sitting in that space, then there's a problem, because you need to be making the art. But to be able to get a little bit of behind the scenes, a little bit about your thinking, about why you're making it, about who you are, I think that really, and that is one of the wins of social, that it really builds out without you having to spend too much energy in the outside world doing it. A connection and an authenticity, and that gets bandied about a lot, but it is important that people feel that they have a connection with you, and then that helps connect to the work. And then when you're curating things, it helps to kind of think, oh, this person and their work will sit beautifully in this space. So I think allowing as much as you're comfortable in your, and that all of that is down to you of what you want to put out there. But I think putting the process to stuff that's not necessarily finished is absolutely wonderful as well, as the finished, polished, beautiful outside things.
Hi, I'm Sophie. One of the things, I guess, online is that I've had the privilege of being part of an American art collective online, and what they've faced is the AI presence and having to fight for their artwork and having to fight for the rights back for their artwork, and where Facebook and Instagram at the moment are being, in Australia, are switching to that all of your content online is going to be mine. So in that, is there any advice that you might offer, I guess, the artists out there?
How long have we got on this conversation? It's rapidly moving.
Yeah, it totally is. It's a very changing space, isn't it? I think it's something just to be very aware of and cautious of, and it's a bit of watch this space as well, because just the change is happening weekly, really. It will be really interesting to see how that impacts visual artists and galleries as well. I was just going to say, obviously in Shepparton, we we do get quite a few people coming in, Dane, but we also rely on that online space to communicate what we're doing to people in Melbourne, to people in Bendigo, to people around the world. So we are really reliant on that space as well, and we have a whole engagement team that works on our socials, our website. So that's really important, but I think AI is a really interesting space which, yeah, it's sort of just being cautious at the moment. Because it's going to, like, between now and the end of the year, it's going to be completely different, and even 2 years or 5 years' time. Yeah, it's a really interesting space, isn't it?
I guess, yeah, there's experts in this area, so I'm not going to try and do that. But I guess I'm also grappling with that as we go to release our collections online, and being caught between, like, we have 7 collections at La Trobe, there's over 10,000 objects. How many of the people in the room have even seen works from our collection? Maybe not many. Online is going to be the way that people can encounter the quality of those collections. And they, that's where research can happen. That, the value of it's immeasurable. But we've got to balance that with copyright permissions, so reaching out to artists and, hopefully being able to contact those artists and estates and get those permissions. We've got to balance that with the risk of the work sitting in stores and never being seen again. So, of course you want to protect the artists and their copyright of the work, but we also want to make sure that it's seen. And one of the very simple ways, I guess, there is making sure that images online are high resolution enough to be seen on screen, but not to be printed. And these are, it's a very basic. Of course, it can be adopted for more digital images and stolen in other ways, but in terms of print and reproduction, that limits that being picked up by a third party. So it's like one little measure, I guess.
Andre.
I think there is a setting on your Facebook and Instagram as well that you can ask them to not accept. Okay. Dane, I just had a question for you about artists being represented. What does it mean for the artist? Is it like exclusive? And yeah, what are the restrictions and that sort of thing?
So I have the model of Australian exclusive representation with those that I'm representing. That means that any sales of your work go through the gallery. So if, say, a collector sends you a DM on Instagram and says, "Oh, I like that painting, can I buy it from the studio?" You say, "Oh, fabulous, here's Dane's contacts, she'll let you know the price." So yeah, everything, if you're represented commercially, goes through the gallery, even if it's not in, say, a current exhibition. Some galleries take the model of exclusive representation within whatever state the gallery is based in. I don't, because I have a small group of 15 artists. Basically, it wouldn't be worth my while to show them if I was splitting and only, half of their work was being sold through me and half was being sold through a gallery in Adelaide or Sydney. Just sort of not a big enough pie to share. And I also think with the internet, like, we're, selling works all over the country. Not many galleries would, except for like your really, really huge, like your Hauser and Wirth and your Zwerners and things like that, would be asking for exclusive worldwide type representation. And we certainly don't. It's just within Australia. If someone has a gallery in New Zealand, I'm like, great, we don't have reach there. They can do business over there. But yeah, everything runs through the gallery when you're represented.
So if there's work that you don't really like you like most of their work, and there's a few paintings that you don't like,
Yep.
do they just not get sold, or is that?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, we don't normally tell our artists we don't like those, we like those. Some galleries will, like some are really vocal about what they want from the artists and, hey, there's a lot of interest in this type of work, we want you to make more of that type of work. That's not the model I take at all. I sort of, my leap of faith is in deciding I want to represent them or not, and then if I represent them, I'm there for the ride. Whatever path they go on, I kind of need to support them. And certainly sometimes there have been times when an artist has diverted from the type of work that initially attracted me to them, but just stick with them. Yeah.
Thank you.
We have time for one more burning question, if anyone's got one up their sleeve. Does anyone have any final questions? Sneak them in, go on.
I was just wondering what your feelings on the large commercial art fairs are, like the Affordable Art Fair, and like how does that reflect on artists that are there?
Yeah, sure. I kind of hate fairs, but they're very necessary. They're incredibly expensive things to do. Even a local art fair like Melbourne Art Fair, your booth costs $20,000 and then you spend another 10 on, you know, all the associated freight, staff, etc., which means you need to sell $60,000 to break even, which is quite hard to do unless you're selling very expensive art. They do expose artists to a much, much bigger audience. So when you do fairs, you do collect a lot more contacts and really like generate a lot more interest in the artist. We don't do many. They're just basically too expensive. We do some. I did one last month in New York that was really incredible experience, fantastic for the artist. Whole new exposure to a market that wasn't aware of that artist before. Yeah, sort of, they're horrible things. Like, they're not places for artists. You know, it's, you don't want to see how the sausage gets made as an artist. You don't want to go there. You don't want to see what's happening. It's pretty crass and commercial. The sort of work that goes well at fairs is not necessarily the most interesting work. It's possibly, you know, showy, shiny, a lot of mirrors and bright things and selfie opportunities. It's the way it is, I'm afraid.
Thanks. And my other question was, I'm just new to Bendigo. I've only been here since Christmas. And it seems like for all of these amazing people that have come from wherever to be here, the people across the road don't seem to have any stake in local artists, like the Bendigo Gallery. Is there a seething backstory behind that?
I could try and respond. So I guess, well, maybe I could start with before I was working here. When I had more time in my studio, I had a solo exhibition at Bendigo Art Gallery. Again, to think about governance structures and what different spaces do is an important thing to think about. So the success of what we do here and the success of Bendigo as an arts and cultural destination is largely thanks to the work of Bendigo Art Gallery. So I think we can think about, you know, those big blockbuster shows that draw people from across the country and draw a lot of media attention, have done a lot for putting us on the map as a creative city. So that's one big thing. But also thinking about, you know, the plight of an artist looking for space. It's always difficult to get an exhibition. That's the thing that everyone wants to do generally, get an exhibition, get my work seen. And, you know, I was very lucky at that time to be in a competitive process to apply and be selected. And they've moved away from that, but they still, like the next exhibition will be, there is an exhibition coming up of work of a local artist, local Central Victorian artist. So there are, I guess they're just not as prominent or as glossy as the big shows, but they are doing that. And then there are the public programs and opportunities to have those encounters with collection with artist talks, with professional development, and I think their Learn team would also be really open to talking with artists about other kinds of opportunities and ideas as well, things like public programs, talks, workshops, other ideas you might have for engaging with their broader work that might be outside of an exhibition. So it may not be the space for you to have a solo show, it might be, but the approach would be to be present, engaged, making yourself known to them, and beyond the curatorial team, but the broader team who was thinking about engagement with audiences. So they're very, very aware of the local arts community, but just their remit is, I guess, different. So every space has a different remit and a different contribution to the community.
They also just acquired one of Lauren Starr's works, the one for the Blue Thumb Art Prize, which is another way. So no, she's not doing a solo show there yet. I'm sure she will at some point. She's incredible. But again, she's done a lot of work just working, just consistently doing shows, mounting her own, making things happen to the point of winning the Blue Thumb Art Prize and having that work acquired by the gallery. So there are avenues, but yeah, it's certainly not as probably transparent in as the smaller council run ones for emerging.
And I think also another thing to consider is that Bendigo Art Gallery operates under the overall banner of City of Greater Bendigo, which is where we're sitting. So in another local government, you might find that in another structure, you might find that, say, Bendigo Art Gallery also manages Dudley House and also manages Exhibit B. Just the way things have evolved over the years is that Bendigo Art Gallery manages essentially the one building, including a public art sculpture outside of the building, but essentially the one building, whereas Bendigo Venues and Events, so our organisation within the City of Greater Bendigo, while our bread and butter is the theatres, so Capitol Theatre, Alhambra, the Engine Room, has also got management of spaces like Dudley House, like the public art spaces, Pennyweight Walk and so forth. So there's a bit of, it's a bit to look broader than just the Bendigo Art Gallery. And of course, the Bendigo Art Gallery's got a relationship with La Trobe as well. So it's not this, I think if we look at the art gallery as this one institution sitting in isolation, it might seem a bit imposing, but I think if we look at being part of the whole arts ecosystem, yeah.
We're going to have to wrap it up. We could keep talking, but we won't, because we've got another session to move swiftly to. But I'd just like you to join me in thanking our amazing panellists today. Thank you so much for sharing it. And the common theme that I will spout on is that, make yourself known to these wonderful people so that your work can just register in the back of their mind for that opportunity to come up. Thank you so much. So I'll throw to you, Karen, to go to our next session.
So I will let you stretch your legs and go to the bathroom. We are running a little bit behind schedule already. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, we've got time for a little break, and then we'll be back in here as soon as you can, and we'll kick off with the Artists at Work session.